Alright, so we are in lesson 1. Okay, so we kind of took a break, right? We ended the war, right? And then module 5, if you kind of think back to module 5, is when they were making the Constitution, right? And who did they elect as president? George Washington. Who remembers who was the vice president?
Alexander Hamilton.
Not Alexander Hamilton. Who's the vice president? Anyone remember? Alright. Vice President John Adams. So we have President George Washington and Vice President John Adams. And what was that thing called? What had elected them? Yeah.
Electoral College.
What?
Electoral College.
The Electoral College. And fun fact is, my grandma is very sweet. Who has a sweet grandma? Yeah. Okay. She literally called me one day. She's like, I sent you this thing I found in the newspaper that I thought you could share in your classroom. It's from the newspaper in the Chicago Tribune, because my grandma lives in Chicago. And it's about just how the Electoral College came to be. So I thought that was really sweet. So I had to share it so I can tell her I shared it with you guys. Okay. Probably going to get that laminated. But, right, we have the Electoral College, and who remembers what makes up the Electoral College, or how many, depends on how many electoral votes a state gets.
Two-thirds majority.
Not 2/3 majority. So how many electoral votes does each state get?
Isn't it based off of population?
It is based on the state's population, right? Because that's why California, remember when we were looking at the map and stuff? That's why California had a lot more than we did, right? That's because it's based on the state's population, because it's based on the state's number of House of Representatives they get. And remember, based on the state gets however many House of Representatives based on their population, and then plus their 2 senators. So no matter what, every state will get at least 3 electoral votes, because every state has 2 senators, and you at least get 1 representative, because you at least have people in your state, right? Okay. So every state at least gets 3 electoral votes, but then depending on however many representatives you have, based on your population for that. So that's where we're at. Okay, we're George Washington's president, John Adams is vice president, and so now we're kind of starting our brand new country. Okay, so that's kind of a recap of where we are at. So it is January 1789, right? Pretty much the start of right, our country. That's when they formed the Electoral College, right? And it's to represent the people's vote in choosing the president, and then unanimously. What does unanimously mean? Yeah,
Everybody voted for it.
Yeah, it was really obvious. It was obvious. Everyone voted for Washington as president, and John Adams then became vice president, because before the 12th Amendment, actually, whoever came in second place became vice president.
Yeah.
What kind of problems do you think that could run into?
I mean, having someone who, say, wants higher taxes being president, but then their vice president has, the exact opposite views would be a bit problematic.
Well, think about our past election. That was the case. So, Joe Biden won presidency, right? Okay. If the second runner-up, the person who came in second place, was the vice president, who in this case would be, who is our current president, President Trump, how do you think that would work? How do you think Biden and Trump would work together?
Not quite that well. Trump would always be trying to
Do you?
do this.
Honestly, I just don't think in general that would be a mess, right? Okay, 2 different, because as we'll start seeing, especially through this module, we start seeing the parties start to form, and parties get really then are on opposite sides, and trying to get 2 people from the same party working, not gonna work. So we'll start seeing that.
And Thomas Jefferson changed that because
and we're gonna see that. Alright, so I wanted to show this map to you, right? This is the actual, remember when we were looking at the map of the electoral votes to win, remember back at the beginning of this month, or November, not this month, it's December now, okay? you'll see kind of just, I wanted to show you what that electoral vote kind of looked like. Why do you think certain states are gray?
They probably aren't in the electoral college yet.
Why do you think?
Maybe
not
it's
voted at
0.
So, I'll give you a hint. Rhode Island is gray. Anyone remember anything about Rhode Island back from Module 5? Javier?
They probably didn't maybe join the union yet.
They were the last to ratify or approve the Constitution. Remember, only 9 of the 13 had to approve the Constitution for it to go into effect. So once 9 approved it, ratified it, it went into effect. But those other 4 states that didn't approve it, ratify it yet, they weren't allowed to vote yet, right? And so, but it went into effect in 1789, and so then therefore, right, they just weren't able to vote yet in this election. All right, let's keep going. All right, so Washington is president, and he knew that they had to set a precedent for the government. So a precedent is an action or decision that later serves as an example. So he knew that whatever they did as a country, whatever he did as the first president, okay, I want to make sure I'm not confusing those 2 words. As the president, he had to set an precedent, okay? So he had to set an example, right? Because whatever he set up was going to be used for later on down the road, right?
That's a pretty scary room.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you do, if you're the first one to do something, right? Think about who's an older sibling, like who's the oldest in their family. Okay, do you have younger siblings? Don't you serve as the example to your younger siblings? Or think about your older sibling. You're the youngest, right? Didn't your older sibling kind of set the example? I know for me, my sister was valedictorian of high school, and I was not. Okay? And so I always got compared to her, right? To say, like, she set the example, oh, you better get good grades like her, and it, you know. Anyone else feel that way? Yeah, okay. Okay, so the first Congress created departments in the executive branch, and so these cabinet members advise the president on different areas of national policy, and that's why the executive branch, when we were talking about the Constitution, we were saying, right, so the executive branch is the president and vice president, and then the first Congress then even created these cabinet members. So these are the departments. So, like, how many of you heard of the Department of Education or Department, yeah.
That's so funny talking about, like, the Minister of Schools, you know.
Yeah.
And they have the Minister of Fish.
Yeah, like Department of Homeland Security. You've all heard these terms, right? Or talked about probably in the news somewhere. Okay. All right. So let's look. Okay, so Washington picked some cabinet members. So we get like first 3 of them, really 4 of them, but we have Alexander Hamilton being Secretary of Treasury. So remember, Alexander Hamilton was pretty much, you know, the right-hand man of Washington during the war, and he really good at writing, really good with money, right? So Treasury has to do with money, okay? Thomas Jefferson was chosen as Secretary of State because, if you remember, he was a diplomat to France and worked a lot with getting France to be on the American side during the war. And so he was chosen as Secretary of State. This person kind of deals with a lot more with, like, foreign affairs. Okay. Henry Knox is going to be chosen as Secretary of War. He was a very high up there leader in the American Revolution War. This later on changes. Yes.
Wasn't Fort Knox named after Henry Knox?
Yeah, I believe so. Secretary of War later changes to Secretary of Defense. And then Samuel Osgood was the Postmaster General that's in charge of the Postal Service. Congress also passed the Judiciary Act of 1789. So this Act created 3 levels of federal courts and defined their powers in relationship to the state courts. This kind of was more for the judicial branch. Alright, so I believe that's it for I know I'm going to leave it up, but I believe that's it for today, right? Super short, okay? Wanted to keep it super short, but we kind of were introduced in these notes to the cabinet members, right? Okay, and next week we're going to listen to a song, or part of a song from Hamilton, because a lot of the second act, who's seen Hamilton?
Yes.
Okay, a lot of the second act has to do with Hamilton and Jefferson battling each other because they don't really get along. Okay, 'cause we're gonna see they start to form different parties. Okay, and so we'll listen to some Hamilton songs about that and their different policies and stuff next week. Okay, but today we good on the notes now. Sure, in 1 second. Okay. But I want to show you what we're doing next, okay? Alright, what we're going to do now, guys, in today's folder that you should have seen, virtual students, make sure you submit your notes here, please. In-person students, you do not have to, okay? It's just for a virtual thing. That's like their attendance. Okay, we're doing this presidential cabinet assignment. What we're looking at is you're looking at Washington's cabinet members, but then also you're going to be using the internet, and actually this is a really cool time for you guys to be doing this because we have a new president coming in, and since the president chooses his or her cabinet members, do you think the cabinet members that are in place today are going to be changed once the new president is sworn in? Yes. And so it's actually real cool because Biden has already chosen some
And a lot of
of
them
his
are women and minorities.
of his chosen some of his cabinet members, and so we were able to put some of those questions in now, and so we're going to be able to start seeing some of those changes. So you guys have the rest of the time. If you would like to work with a partner on this, I'd be more than happy that you guys do that. Okay, but you will probably need to use the internet, I will say, but use your notes for like Washington's cabinet members. Okay, yes, good. All right, good to go.